and it led to tragic consequences. If we're not careful, something equally tragic, possibly even more so, could happen with Iran. So this is not a moment to look away. It's a moment to be very clear. This is our responsibility as citizens to know what is going on. It began with the fact that the United States, for a while, has had obviously a lot of activity in Iraq. But years ago, Iraq and Iran were at war with each other. That's when Saddam Hussein was in power. And in an odd way, it sort of served the interests of the United States that Iran had its hands full dealing with Iraq. Once we invaded Iraq, Iran was actually freer to have a more major role in what was going on in that area of the world. Now, recently also, because the United States withdrew from the Iranian nuclear deal, this strengthened the hand of the hardliners there. So Iran has been active in Iraq. A while ago, there was a U.S. contractor who was killed by Iranian-backed militias in Iraq. In response to that, the United States attacked. In response to that, these Iranian-backed militias in Iraq stormed the embassy, the U.S. embassy in Baghdad. Iran did have them pull back. No Americans were killed, also because of the strength of our security there. The other day, President Trump ordered, in retaliation, the assassination of a man named Soleimani, who was in Baghdad at the time. Soleimani was, some say, could be considered the third most powerful man in Iran. He was in charge of the Quds forces there. Now think of our most powerful generals, think of our most powerful military leaders, think of the people who are in charge, top dogs in the US military. That's who Soleimani was. And think how the United States would respond if somebody assassinated one of our top military brass. It could be considered an act of war. Iran is going to respond. They've made it very clear they're going to respond, and the world is sort of on pins and needles right now because we don't know yet what that response will be. But each of us needs to be very, very clear. War with Iran would be catastrophic. They are one of the most powerful armies in the world. Now you might be asking, in fact you should be asking, why does Trump have this kind of power to take this kind of, action that he wants to, just on a unitary basis? He has this power because of something called the National Defense Authorization Act. The founders cannot be considered responsible for this because they're not. The founders wrote into the Constitution that in order for the United States to declare war, the president needs congressional approval. This is why, after the attack on Pearl Harbor, President Roosevelt had to go to Congress and get permission to declare war against Japan. But after 9/11, the Congress passed what was called the National Defense Authorization Act, which gave pretty much unlimited power to the American president to take whatever military action he felt was necessary in order to, quote unquote, fight terrorism. And Congress has continued to authorize and to reauthorize the NDAA with very little change as the years have gone by since then. In other words, Congress has completely surrendered its constitutionally mandated authority, basically, to the president and the military-industrial complex. So this is not just Trump's fault. This was a failure on the part of Congress to in any way rein this man in. And Representative Ro Khanna from California had tried. In this recent reauthorization of the NDAA by the House of Representatives, he had proposed 2 amendments that would rein in the president's power to take military action against Iran, and both of those amendments were stripped. So this is not just the president, this is also Congress, at least indirectly responsible for what has occurred here. This is one of those areas, as is everything that I've talked about on my campaign, where the American people need to step in. The U.S., the State Department, the administration are full drive today, trying to justify the assassination of Soleimani. They're saying, for instance, that Iran was responsible for something like 600 deaths of Americans in Iraq. And they absolutely might have been, but we should remember that the U.S. invasion of Iraq has been responsible for thousands of deaths of Americans. In addition to that, Secretary of State Pompeo was on television this morning saying that they have intelligence that there were imminent attacks being planned against American interests by the Iranians. I have no reason to doubt that, but thwart the attacks. That you must do, thwart the attacks. However, to kill Soleimani, this did not do anything other than ensure more attacks are on the way. Let's be very clear. There are thousands of American military and civilian personnel there. They were already at risk. They are even more at risk today. And let us pray for them and pray for their blessing and their protection. Each and every one of us has a role to play here, in whatever way, whether it is a no on war against Iran, or with Iran at this point, whether it has to do with a protest, whether it has to do with calling your senators, calling your representatives, your own meditations, your own prayers. There are sophisticated, wise, and level-headed people in the American defense establishment, and I'm sure that they're doing everything that they can today to rein in the more impulsive and reckless impulses of our president. And I would hope that there are sophisticated people in Iran as well who know war with Iran and the United States is not the answer. Hold this in your heart, hold this in your mind, do not look away. This is a moment when your attention is needed. I will be giving regular updates. Make sure you're on my mailing list at marianne2020.com and you'll get my letters. I will give regular video responses as well. Stay tuned. I'll let you know what I know. Take these things into your mind, take these things into your heart, and we will move through this. Let us pray that there be no war. Thank you.